मालासुदां कुंभ विबोध मुद्रा विद्याविराजत करवारी जातां अपार कारुण्य सुधांबुराशिं श्री शारदांबा प्रणतोस्मि नित्यं. Seeking the benediction of Jagannmata Sharda Parameshwari, Vagdevi Saraswati, the repository of all that is culture, knowledge, tradition, wisdom, art, learning and fine art, as I bow to her to commence my address today. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this pleasant and solemn function organized this morning on the occasion of the Amrit Mahotsav, the 75th anniversary of the Indian Constitution and the inauguration of the Constitutional Garden or lawn in the SIES Sri Chandrasekharendra Saraswati Vidyapuram, the first of its kind amongst campuses of academic institution in the country. It was on this very day, 75 years ago, the seal of approval was given by the Constituent Assembly to the Constitution of India. We are therefore celebrating 75 glorious years of the journey of the Indian Constitution. As India woke to life and freedom at the stroke of the midnight hour on the 14th of August 1947, the vision of the founding fathers of the nation quickly shifted focus to the monumental task of governing this large nation of ours. They gave unto us a republic and clothed it with a constitution to guide and govern the republic. Over these 75 years, has the nation made substantial progress to meet the expectations of its people. As it addressed the burgeoning issues, the burning issues at the onset of independence of poverty and illiteracy, as it ensured that the people of the land secure for themselves all those eternal principles that are enshrined in the Constitution of India. No celebration is meaningful unless the state guarantees the minimum essentials of roti, kapda and makan to the people of the land. There is no denying that India has made substantial progress over these 75 years. She has emerged as the fifth largest economy in terms of GDP the world over. She is the fastest growing macro economy in terms of GDP again. She is well poised to reach the third in terms of GDP parameters again, next only to USA and China. Economic parameters by themselves are not the sole criterion for assessing the progress and the prosperity of a nation. On this day when we are remembering our Constitution, we do pause for a while for Nani Ardeshir Palkiwala, who sustained for us the basic structure of the Constitution. It was Nani who once said that it is not the GDP, it is the GNH, which should be the sole parameter for evaluating the progress of a nation. Gross national happiness. Gross national happiness is a function not only of economic prosperity, but of other sense of well-being as well. More than 4,000 years ago, when the first alphabets were etched in tablets of clay in Indus Valley civilization, we still today have several Indians who cannot read and write. Despite the economic progress, we still have several of our brethren in far-flung areas of this country who go to bed every night without a morsel of food or pure drinking water. That is why milestones like this become important to celebrate. More than the joy, mirth and glee, it provides an occasion for reflection, of going down the memory lane, of assessing all those limitations, those laggards and failures that had retarded the progress of the nation, to activate the drawing board and to redraw the democratic framework of the nation to meet the aspirations of the teeming population. India is a sovereign, socialistic, secular democratic republic. So are the words that are currently borrowed from the preamble to the Constitution. On the 26th of January 1950, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the first President of India, unfurled the national flag to the 21-gun salute. He declared the nation as a republic and also brought into being, with legal effect, the Constitution of India. The Constitution of India was the handbook of the Constituent Assembly, comprising of 246 members drawn from all over the country. India became a republic 858 days after she had acquired a dominion status following the withdrawal of the British rule. But it took the Constituent Assembly 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days to debate, discuss the various provisions contained not just in the preamble, but in the articles and the schedules to the Constitution. And finally, on this day 75 years ago, it gave its seal of approval to the Constitution. In a special address to the nation on the occasion of the First Republic Day and also the Constitution being made into a law, Rajendra Babu said that we should ever be grateful to the founding fathers of this nation. We should strive to realize peacefully but surely those dreams that inspired the father of the nation and all those involved in the nationalist struggle for creating a classless, cooperative, happy and free society. We still have a long, long way to go to realize the dreams of the founding fathers and the father of the nation. But yes, some progress, as I said before, has already been made by the nation. The Constitution, as it was adopted, at that point of time, contained 395 articles. It had 8 schedules and a preamble. Over these 75 years, the Constitution has witnessed 106 amendments, including amendment to the preamble to the Constitution, which I shall come back later. And these schedules to the Constitution have progressed from 8 to 12. Now, that's what is the state of the Constitution today. We should ever be grateful and be proud of those ideas that form part of that living document called as Constitution, which was given unto us by the Constituent Assembly. It had members, the most brilliant minds ever to have been born in this part of the universe in the last 2 centuries. They were aware of those wheels that shall progress the chariot for the development of the nation, and more particularly, all of them had experienced poverty at some time or other. They were conscious of the need for securing for the marginalized, the poor, the weaker section of the society, protection for some time till a level playing field is given to them as well to enjoy the fruits of democracy of this great nation of ours. Over these years, judicial pronouncements and the innovations that have been carried out in the interpretations of the Constitution have strengthened the Constitution and made it contemporary and fit for the demands of the current times. The Constitution continues to be a destiny for the nation. The founding principles of the Constitution, the pillars, the bedrocks on which the Constitution stands today, are essentially the principles that have been drawn from Hinduism, tested from times immemorial, the gospels that have been given unto the world by this faith, which we do not consider it as a religion, but as a way of life. The preamble to the Constitution set forth that the 4 cardinal principles of this nation, and therefore through this Constitution, is justice, equality, fraternity, and liberty. And all these thoughts in later years came from Chanakya, Vishnugupta, or Kautilya, as he was variedly called, in his Viduraniti, Arthashastra, when he propounded that the progress or the soundness of a kingdom is based on 3 essential principles of democracy, liberalism, and sovereignty. As long as there is liberalism in the kingdom, the thought process of the people of the nation is equanimous, wide enough to reach out to the entire world. Democracy will flourish. And when democracy flourishes along with liberalism, sovereignty is strengthened and guaranteed for the kingdom. The Constitution, as it was adopted on this day in 1949, had the preamble which had only sovereign democratic republic. In later years, socialism and secularism were brought into the Constitution. It was during the emergency that these two provisions were included in the Constitution. To people interested in history, if you were to scan through the pages of the proceedings of the Constituent Assembly, there were three motions which were brought in to include both socialism and secularism into the preamble of the Constitution. And on each occasion, it failed to pass the test of the Constituent Assembly, and therefore the Constituent Assembly, as it adopted the preamble, had only sovereignty and democracy. It was during the emergency, 1975 to 1980, when the civil liberties were curtailed, when fundamental rights were temporarily suspended, when most of the opposition were in prison and the rest of the opposition were inactivated and dumbed by the mute of the government, when the parliament had outlived its life already, and as a consequence the government had also outlived its life, it was during that outlived period that the amendments were brought about. But these amendments are of no consequences to all of us. That's for the lawyers and others to debate and discuss on the legality of the same. The matter has already reached the Supreme Court. It is in a very advanced stage of adjudication, and it would not be ere long before the fate of such provisions in the Constitution will be tested before the litmus of the Supreme Court's judgment. But that's not what is all about. These things do not guarantee both life and property, safety and security of a minority. It is the equanimous view of the majority. It is the liberal thoughts that they have, the belief to coexist, and the oneness of creation that alone can secure all these things that the Constitution attempts to give you through the preamble. From times immemorial, this nation has given those eternal principles of life itself. Every nation has a mission to pursue, has a cause to subserve, and a message to deliver to the world. And from eternity, the gospel of truth, the gospel of oneness of creation, peaceful coexistence of humanity has been the message that India had given unto the world. Both the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Puranas and the Itihasas that I have followed, which are the fulcrum of Hinduism, have echoed the same thought. The Upanishad says, Ayam nijahap parovedi gananam laguchetasam udara charitanam tu vasudeiva kutumpakam. This world is but a small family. This is not a concept of the 20th century when the first glimpse of liberalization came and the trade barriers were broken, boundaries of nations were demolished, and the entire world paled into a small, tiny trading village. This is a thought that this great nation and its scriptures had given to the world. This campus of ours is named after the Mahaswami of Kanchi. All during his 100 years sojourn in this universe, he had always emphasized on the oneness of creation. And he had always said, it is unity and not uniformity of religions that will ensure peace and tranquility on the earth wherever it is being practiced. And the sage of Kanchi in 1966 wrote for the United Nations, Maitri Bhajate, foster friendship amongst nations, eschew competition and forbearance, and ultimately he concluded by saying, Shreyo Boyat Sakala Jananam, may the people of the world be prosperous. So this nation never had a singular view of drawing its identity on the basis of India, Indians. It was on the basis of humanity, and it was on the basis of the globe as a whole. And these are the principles that have been enshrined into the Constitution of India. That is why it's a document beyond a mere legal document. The Constitution of the United States of America, unlike the Indian Constitution, of course it is the first written constitution of the world. It's a 4-page document. Ours runs into pages after pages. You could have seen the size of the book in the lawn itself. Much bigger than that is the size when it was handwritten. And these 4 pages, original as they are still on display for every American to experience in the National Archives of America. Whereas in our country, I think it has been tucked into the safe lockers for us to believe that we can experience through walls and all those grids that they have put across. The Constitution of America was first written in the year 1867. It was adopted in the year 1868. It got the legal stamp in the year 1869, 235 years before. And in these 235 years, it had witnessed 26 amendments to the Constitution. The last of those amendments was in the year 1992. But if you were to recognize that the Bill of Rights, which contained 10 amendments, came immediately after the adoption of the American Constitution, only 16 amendments were done over the last 235 years in that sense of the term. When you contrast that with the Indian Constitution, we have seen 106 amendments. But nearly 50% of these amendments are repetition of certain provisions of the Constitution, like the languages that have become official or classical that are included by Amendment to Schedule 8 to the Constitution, the creation of new states post-independence, everything is brought in as an amendment to the Constitution. And lastly, the block of reservation for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and OBCs, which first was brought in when the Constitution came into being for a block period of 10 years between 1950 to 1960. If you see the record of proceedings, Dr. Ambedkar has said it should not be there for more than 2 renewals. And by that time, the level playing field should have come. But the last valid period for this reservation is between 2020 to 2030. 8 amendments in the aggregate are contributed by the block reservation that is being done. In a sense, therefore, Indian Constitution has also not seen great amendments, but except that amendment to the preamble to the Constitution, all other constitutional amendments are procedural with the needs of time. On this joyous, whereas the British Constitution is an unwritten constitution. It is based on treaties, agreements, customs, practices. It is also based on judicial pronouncements and the changing dimensions in living as United Kingdom moved with times. The framers of the Indian Constitution got the benefit of the working of both the written Constitution of the United States of America and the unwritten Constitution of the United Kingdom. That is why this Constitution, a large democracy like this, which still had not matured, has stood the test of time. On this joyous occasion when we celebrate the Amrit Mahotsav of our Constitution, I think it's our bounden duty to preserve, protect the Constitution, not just as Constitution, but the pristine purity and the thought process that had gone into the making of the Constitution. Dr. Ambedkar once said, a Constitution is not a mere lawyer's document. It's a tree of life. It's the spirit for the ages. He also said that as long as commerce, that is economics and ethics, coexist, every aspect of human endeavor can be guaranteed, including that of the Constitution. But whenever they are in conflict with each other, economics will always prevail, because no man on the earth and no vested interest will give up commercial gains and wealth for a paltry values that ethics would have provided. And as long as commerce has got a conscience, Ambedkar felt the working of the Constitution shall also be relatively smooth. On this occasion, as we take the renewed pledge to preserve and protect the Constitution, we are beholden to Justice B. N. Sri Krishna for his gracious presence this morning to inaugurate the constitutional lawn and to preside over this formal function following the inauguration. He is a life member of our society. He has been a trustee of the society for a long time. And I should tell you what I said to him a few minutes before, that before he moved to the bench from the bar, he had a roaring practice in labor laws. And at the end of a very tiring day in the courts, when we had to come back home, his clients will be waiting for him to seek his expert advice for settling draft and provisions. It was during the time in the 1980s, I will bump into him, taking all the papers of the society, the petitions, the counter affidavits, the rejoinders, the show cause notices, the explanations given, then the provisions of that draconian laws that governed aided schools and colleges, and to read between the lines and read, even if you read on the lines, you will not understand what those drafts were, thanks to the draftsman who gave it. It was left to his hands to provide that sagacious advice that kept the society going during those days. He never demurred for a while, because this was pro bono, it was honorary for the society. Even if we had said that it should be paid for, we never had the capacity to pay him. But it was his large heart. It was his concern for this institution. If today SIS is seen of having a workforce which is disciplined, which is committed, substantial credit for that should go to Justice Sri Krishna, because he ensured that our teaching force and the non-teaching force were able to respect not just the law of the land, and also go with the coordinated community effort to further the cause of education. Whenever we look at him, my mind goes to his illustrious father, Sri B. Narayan Swami. He was the president of our society for 17 long years. Those golden years in the formative period of the society, it was his sagacious advice, wise counsel, born out of years of experience, a spiritual man that he was, combined that and gave a new ethos to this institution, not to be a brute commercial institution, out to have a cafeteria which serves junk food called as education. If today you are able to see some value that is being incorporated into our practices, it is thanks to predecessors like Sri Narayan Swami. And when the month end comes, there used to be goosebumps, because when the payroll was being prepared, the amount that was required to disburse the entire pay, that much money never remained in the banks of the society. It was left to my father, who served this society for 42 years, to go to Narayan Swami at his residence. He would not look at what he brings. He would write out the check for the difference and rounded it off and give it across, so that the next day the salary would have been disbursed to all the employees. If it was one of a sort, fine. But it was not so. It was action replay month after month. And month after month, Narayan Swami will not look at any documentation, will simply write out what is required to bridge the gap between what is required and what is available. Bear me out when I say there could be several reasons why this institution has reached its preeminent position today. But for that contribution of, that silent contribution of Sri Narayan Swami, our former president, which ensured that we are able to retain our faculty. Who would remain with you if you don't pay the salaries for the month? And those were dear days. The little salary that you pay was required for running the house. Today we have various divergences. That is the greatest contribution his father ever made to this society and its functioning. Law is the common heritage and shared legacy of the people of the world. It is on the shoulders of judges wherever they are, in whichever court they are, in whichever part of the any 7 continents they are. on whom lies the necessity of upholding the majesty of law, the sanctity, the judicial sanctity, probity, and honesty of the system. The truth, which is the cardinal principle, the bedrock belief on which the entire justice system works, flows out of the judges. It is on their shoulders lies the destiny of judiciary itself. But at a time when vociferous tendencies and divisive elements gain currency across the world, moral values take a back seat and there will be degeneration. And this degeneration is not confined to only some spectre of human activity. Even judiciary gets affected. But from times immemorial, other than education, if a tag of nobility has ever been given, it has been given to judges and judiciary. That is why in this country, we address them as Your Lordship. World over, they are addressed as Your Honor. Nowhere else this title is being given. It is given to all judges without discrimination as part of the proceedings of the court. But with this degeneration, the general perception, even about judiciary, has fallen marginally. It is only because of the blazing integrity, honesty, judicial fairness, and truth of judges like Sri Krishna and many others who have kept the flag flying high and truth always surviving, like the emblem of this nation, part of this constitution, which says Satyameva Jayate, which is an Upanishadic word, that truth shall always prevail, and it can always prevail if justice carries the cornerstone of truth. That is the greatest contribution of judges like Sri Krishna and the like of him who have kept this institution going. As I come to the end of my address this morning, may the Jaganmatu Kamakoti Kamakshi, Kannale Arul Tarum Nayaki, that goddess who blesses you with her eyes itself, and goddess Sharadamba, to whom I had the initial invocation, bless him with a long life. May both of them enable him to achieve the purposes of this Janma. May she also bless us too, so that we can draw a leaf from the life of nobility of such men, incorporate into our lives through passage of time, in our eternal quest in this pilgrimage of perfection, a little of those qualities of head and heart, and then make our lives sublime. Thank you and God bless.